Welcome back to today's episode, the podcast where we discuss the most recent installments of a different series every show. It's Friday, National Sunglasses Day. It's the hottest week of the year, and we get to reshoot the same podcast that we've already done because of audio issues. Fun stuff. So if any of the countdown information doesn't sound authentic, it may not be, and you picked up on that. But whatever. It's 2,000 years in the making because sunglasses have been around for 2,000 years. Let's just talk about sunglasses, right?
How does that have to do with countdown?
Well, does anyone wear sunglasses in countdown?
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, then let's just jump into Jensen Ackles and his career, right? I have a game for you, and I switched it up from the last one because the last one was too simple.
Right.
You know him from what? Supernatural?
Supernatural. I know that he's voiced Batman. I think he was even Red Hood in the Red Hood thing. Obviously, The Boys, which is the reason why I think this show was made from season 3.
Smallville, Big Sky.
He was in My Bloody Valentine. I never saw it, but I think he was the main character in that.
Right. Him and Jared Padalecki both did like horror movies at the same time that they were doing Supernatural. He was also in The Winchesters when we reviewed that a long time ago.
Yeah.
So he's been all over the place. He's had a busy last few years. Eric Kripke likes to keep in touch.
He was in Tracker. He was the brother, right?
True. And the real question is, like, why hasn't Jared Padalecki been in The Boys?
I'm assuming he's going to be in season 5.
Because it's the final season?
Yeah, that, and also they've had everyone else. I feel like they've been saving him.
If you go to Jared Padalecki's Wikipedia page and you scroll down to the most final thing, there's a TBA, but it does say he's listed on The Boys. So it's basically confirmed that he's going to be there.
Yeah.
So there's that. Let's play a Jared Ackles? Oh my God.
Jensen
Ackles game. So I have 4 facts. One of them isn't true. Ready?
Yep.
He started modeling at 2. He co-owns a brewery, It's Always Sunny style, and I won't tell you the name of it if it's true. And he was on the set of Rust during the tragedy with Alec Baldwin. And his favorite basketball player is Dirk Nowitzki.
Okay, I know that he was in Rust. I don't know if he was there during the accident. The 2-year-old one sounds too, like, real. I'm gonna go with the bar one, like he owns a bar.
It's called the Family Business Beer, as in, like,
Dad's
family
the
business.
family business, yeah.
So that's true. It's actually that his favorite basketball player is not Dirk Nowitzki, but the Dallas Mavericks' other famous player, Steve Nash. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But he was in the Rust movie, but they, I think, recast him or something after.
Was he someone that, because I know that with
he
Rust,
had to testify.
Some people didn't come back after they learned that it was being picked up.
They even did like a report on all the guns that were there, and one of his guns had a live round in it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so he had to do some sort of testification, or that's not a word. I'm making up words now because it's late. Okay, so Derek Haas is the guy who brought Countdown into being. You might know him because he's created the entire Chicago lineup, as well as FBI International, and he's also written some movies. We already talked about the movies he wrote. Wanted, your favorite because of Mark Miller. You've read all Mark Miller comics.
Yep.
3:10 to Yuma, Too Fast, Too Furious, which is the last Fast and Furious movie to be released on VHS.
I didn't know that.
I mean, the more you know. Okay, so why are we talking about Derek Haas, though? He created this show, and how are those movies or those TV shows related to Countdown?
Because Countdown on Amazon Prime feels like it was made for NBC.
We're talking about 3 episodes here.
Yes, at least the first 3.
Teeth in the Bone. That's the second, I think, premiere episodes where they have teeth in the title. Revival was the other one, I think, right? Where they were chasing down a horse, someone who was eating a horse.
But this is not a horror show. This is just supposed to be a police procedural.
Exactly. So you're saying because he's worked on all the Chicago lineup, which I dare you to try to go down all of that list.
The Chicago Fire, Chicago Med, Chicago. Those are the only 2 I knew.
Chicago Justice, and then we're missing one. I don't know.
Chicago Police?
Yes. Chicago PD. So yeah, after the Department of Homeland Security officer is killed in plain sight, played by Milo Ventimiglia.
Yeah, I can actually just jump straight into my pros because my pros have to do with the beginning of this series.
Well, let me get the summary out then.
Yeah.
All right, so after that guy's killed, the LAPD detective Mark Meacham, played by Jensen Ackles, is brought in to be a covert task member in this force of undercover agents from various law enforcement agencies who are all coming together just to find the murderer, but soon they find out that there's something much more sinister that's about to happen in LA.
Yes.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
And I just starting off, I like Jensen Ackles a lot, and his role is no exception. I think that he does a great job, and he always elevates. I realized this because I wouldn't think so, but he always elevates. I'm always happier to see him in something, and I think he makes the material better.
I thought that wasn't the case until I saw him in The Boys.
Right.
When he started playing that character, I was like, oh man, he is a fun. Like he almost saved The Boys. Third season.
Third season.
Third
yes.
season. Yeah.
And I remember he showed up in Gen V as well. But
that was a treat.
He's a great actor, and also Milo Ventimiglia in the first scene was a very surprise cameo. I'm so pissed off at Amazon Prime for getting rid of X-Ray because I would have recognized it was him much faster.
I've never had ever since Peter Petrelli. He's like instantly recognized.
So you just know him like straight off the bat.
We've also done other podcasts where he was like the main character.
The Company You Keep.
And that was another heist type show where they brought in a group of like highly professional individuals to work together, kaleidoscope style, and try to do something.
The funny thing about this, though, is that they always end up getting someone famous for the first scene and then killing them off. It reminded me a lot of like Mr. and Mrs. Smith, where they got famous people for that, and then they ended up dying in the first scene. We even talked about in our first recording Mission Impossible 4 with Sawyer.
Yeah. And he's in Duster now, so you can watch him there. We might have even talked about his thing in Mission Impossible in the Duster podcast, too.
Yeah, no, I think we did. But it just seems like the way that these TV shows go now. Let's get a big name actor and then just kill them off straight away. Because that's what happens with him.
But like
Garden.
The whole deal is that this Mark Meacham fella is supposed to replace the Department of Homeland Security officer?
Well, what happens is Nathan Blythe, in fact, this is the second scene of the whole show, he kind of heads the task force. He's like the Nick Fury, the Viola Davis, Suicide Squad Avengers, where he's getting the team together.
Because all these team members are like castaways, or are they...
Well, this was the interesting thing. I thought that we were going to get individual scenes of all of the members and then have them all meet together. But then I almost ditched that premise because we start off after Nathan Blythe scenes, like the first scene of Mark Meacham.
And that's played by Eric, that one guy, from Grey's Anatomy.
Eric Dane, wasn't
Eric
it?
Dane, yes.
Yeah. And then Mark Meacham in jail, Jensen Ackles, first time we see him, he starts beating up a couple people. And I was thinking to myself, oh, okay, so he's going to be the misfit. He's going to be the one that's like kind of the odd one out because he has like a dark side to him, until we learn that no, he's just actually been undercover for 9 months. He's part of the LAPD.
Right. Like Lazarus, you thought maybe he was a villain, someone who had been stuck in jail, and they were like, we need him though.
Yeah, like with
he's
Axel.
This tough guy and he knows how to get shit done, and so like one last job, we'll take him out of prison, we'll make a deal, Blackbird style.
But it wasn't that way at all. He's actually just doing his job.
Yeah, he's just Brooklyn Nine-Nine, Andy Samberg, season I think 4 when
it's funny you actually bring up Brooklyn Nine-Nine because there's a will they won't they with the next person I was about to talk about, Amber Oliveras. She has been working for 14 years. The first scene we see with her, she is in a basement tied with her arms above her head.
Okay, you're going to have to explain that a little bit further because that could be interpreted in any numbers of 50,
she's been kidnapped.
50 Shades of Grey.
She's been kidnapped,
okay.
and a cleaning lady helps her beat up the kidnappers.
Not the cleaning lady.
No, a different one that was just cleaning in the basement, gives her a stool to stand on so she can escape the handcuffs. And then we learned that she was part of a case as well. So 2 people we learned were in these like precarious situations.
Just turn out to be law officials.
Yes.
And so how many are total in this team?
I think that there's around 6 because that's when we get the next scene where everyone is together. We only got background on Mark and Amber, but we also get Nathan Blythe, the head person. We get Keontae Bell. He's an FBI agent, has a family of cops. He even helps Mark get out of prison in the second episode. Evan Shepard, she works in the cybercrime department. Luke Finau, he works on guns, gangs, and narcotics. He even has his birthday in the third episode. And then Drew is like Nathan's assistant. I thought that all the backstories, except for the ones that we saw, were really not that great, except for Drew's, where he lost his kid Noah in a car crash, but still manages his little league team.
So that's his crutch. Everybody in the show is not just facing impeding doomsday for LA, but they're also facing their own like issues in real life. That's what I at least got from the interviews.
Right, because what happens in the first episode is the Robert Darden, they saw the person who assassinated him. I think his name was Chris Murillo, and he ended ends up dying in the first episode, but what they find at the compound where the shootout took place was a ton of fission, which is supposed to make a Chernobyl type event in LA. It's kind of on
There's
the
fusion and
horizon.
there's fission. Is that what you're talking about?
Fission, yes, fission material.
Okay.
And so that's supposed to be kind of the threat for the full season. And I think that that's a fine threat to have,
Right.
Chernobyl level event for your season.
Well,
but
that's like a nuke, though.
yes,
If you're able to like fuse an atom or create nuclear fission, which I don't know if we've even been able to accomplish yet.
Well, I thought that we were going to get kind of more information on it, and yes, we do learn who is making this. It's this guy in the second episode named, I think, Volchek.
Mhm.
But it doesn't seem like the plot is actually moving anywhere once we learn that this nuke is going to go off whenever.
Okay, so like they're not making very much headway.
It feels like the show was like going so fast because so much was happening in the first 3 episodes, but it didn't seem like the overall story actually was heading
They weren't
anywhere
getting any closer to the bad guy.
Yes.
And you know that at the end of this thing, you're going to have Meacham facing off with this Volchek person, and they're going to have a one-on-one,
Yes,
and then he's going to like
100%.
shoot him in the face, and that'll
Yeah,
be the end of it.
because well, I don't know if it's going to be that quick, but in
Well,
episode 2...
he has to run on a timeline because he's got an issue of
Right.
himself,
Oh,
right?
right. I didn't even mention. So yeah, at the end of the first episode,
Jensen Ackles.
this was just so, it broke my suspension of disbelief. Yes, Mark Meacham, he has this huge tumor in his head. Yet somehow we are seeing in these 3 episodes him running around, not having a problem, shooting off guns, coming up with plans. The size of this tumor,
It was big.
he wouldn't be able to move.
I saw, I think, the MRI image of it, and it's like sometimes they can just show you a tiny little bloop or a little fudgy spot, a little...
Yeah, like this will grow type of thing.
Yeah, even then they'll be experiencing some pretty serious symptoms. This, they wanted to make it very clear to anybody watching that this guy has a softball-sized tumor in his head.
It is incurable, yet he is
Well, it's
doing
glioblastoma. Yeah.
he's doing these insane moves in the 3 episodes, and the only time they ever really address it is at the very beginning of the first episode when we don't know he has a tumor and he has some headaches.
You know what's weird about that is he has headaches in The Boys. He also can explode in The Boys. And he also grabs his head a lot. So similar, they have the same beard, right?
Yeah.
In both shows.
No, so you're saying that there's some crossover there?
There could be. Maybe when he's like in a hallucinatory state, he like goes to the boys' world. Like that's where he is in his mind. And he's like, I'm a superhero.
However, I think Mark Meacham, he kind of knows that he's annoying. There's this really bad will they, won't they. I was actually really annoyed the show decided to go this way with Amber. Amber, she has some skeletons in her own closet. She was on drugs, or she was a drug addict, a former drug addict. And in the second episode, it's so predictable where this is going to go. She steals a kilo of heroin, and Mark Meacham sees her do it, and she's just like, I'm going to get rid of this so it's not on the streets. But then in the third episode, we see her hide it in her house. This is obviously being set up for later on in the season when someone realizes something is off about her. Maybe Mark Meacham.
But I mean, heroin. I
Yeah.
mean, there's drugs that you can get away with. Even if you're a drug addict, you watched the series The Pit. Like the guy was supposedly taking too much of or we've done Dope Sick, or like usually it's a painkiller that someone's addicted to. But heroin?
Well, okay. The reason is because episode 2 and episode 3 actually follow somewhat of a similar storyline, which is kind of weird. Both entail at least the team or part of the team having to gain trust. In the second episode, it's for a cartel where they're having to do drug running.
Blythe's team heads to Mexico, so they're
Right.
not even in LA anymore. They find out there's going to be a bomb in LA, and instead they go
Yes.
they go into Mexico.
And don't forget, in episode 2, there's backflashes to Belarus in 2008. It really wasn't that deep, even though the show tried to make it. Volchek ended up killing someone that made his brother commit suicide. So we learned that he's the one that's going to be behind the bomb, but it really, I didn't think, play out that well. The backflashes were a little odd to be shown because there's no backflashes from what I remember in episode 1 or 3 either.
So maybe it was a directorial choice?
Yeah,
I don't know.
probably.
Okay, so yeah, they're in Mexico for this episode, and they're trying to get information from this like shipment that's about to go down or
Right.
something in exchange.
An illegal ship post, or like a,
They're
something like
making an
that.
exchange for it. So they're like making a trade even though they work for the US government.
Yeah, and so Lopez, he's kind of this drug dealer. He has a ton of heroin in his car, and they have to end up taking a truck, and they have to go past border police.
Yeah, but you think that they could work together. I hate these shows where like when one agency is like, we got to keep it completely under guys so that if anybody gets in trouble, then we can't report it to the president.
Oh,
like,
I mean, that's what this whole entire show is. They're there's so many times where it's like, it feels like even with what you're trying to achieve, it's almost not worth it. Because what ends up happening is that when they go to the Border Patrol place, one of the cops gets very suspicious of heroin that is inside the car. And then Jensen Ackles' character, Mark Meacham, he has to start running into like 5 different cars and cause a scene, so much so that all the police arrest him. And then I think it was like Keontae or one of the group members that like ran into the pressing booth where the arm for the where they're able to
it's
go
a heist
through
show.
is.
So for the second episode, they're in Mexico. They're figuring out how someone's going to, who the evil guy is, right?
Yes. They're
And
trying to get the name.
and how do they get out of Mexico? Or like, did something go down? Is there big explosions? What?
Well, they're able to do the drug trade, and then Keontae flashes his FBI badge, and he's able to get Meacham out of jail. At the very end of the episode, they're talking to Lopez, the guy that they did the drug trade for, and he gives the name right before he dies because the truck that they were returning
He died.
explodes. Yeah, and Meacham makes the connection that the person who exploded the truck and also the person
killed the Homeland Security guy or whatever.
Well, also is the one that's doing the Chernobyl event. His name is Volchek, and that's the last name. That's the last word of the episode.
Out of the 3 episodes, which is your favorite?
Probably the third one, because I could understand it more. Yeah.
Yeah. So the team stages a high-stakes prison break in an attempt to gain more knowledge on the identity and the whereabouts of this Volchek dude.
Like I was saying, it was strange because episode 2 they were trying to gain the trust of these like gang leaders, and then episode 3 they have to fake Mark being in prison because
it should be easy. He was just there.
Well, Timur is someone that he knew in prison, and Timur, his uncle, has something to do with this bomb that's going to go off, or the material
so he just like
that they
checks
found.
in. He's like, I know I just disappeared for a month, but like I'm still in prison.
They
with you.
stage it so much so that Mark is like still in prison, but I believe it's Amber and it's Finau that are driving the truck, like they're prison guards. They take Timur.
We'll pause there. So they make a deal. This rogue group of random assortment of a bunch of government officials who then infiltrate the prison, but really they're just making a deal with the warden that we're going to take one of your prisoners, try to convince him that he's escaped.
Yeah. Well, no. What happens is that they take Timur and then they open up the back and you see Timur is like, hey, Mark, and they're like chatting away. And then they're going to stage it so that they can escape, so they can try and get Michael, his uncle, who is tied to this Chernobyl-level event. The DA has a problem with this at the very end of the episode. In fact, they even talked to Nathan Blythe about it. Mark is being surprisingly silent, but how it ends is that they do the whole entire breakout. There was even a funny scene where Mark takes a gun and shoots a live round so close to Luke Finau's head, and it's his birthday.
Less funny now that we know the fact about the Rust thing.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I thought that worked for the show. It was like one of the good lighthearted moments of it.
Because it's him convincing his buddy from prison that they are safe together, that he can be trusted, and then they make their way back to their base, right?
Yes. So Mark and Timur, they meet his uncle, and the uncle ends up being a lot angrier than usual. But Mark, he wants to figure out about this plan that's going on. So he says, I'm going to use the restroom, and he goes downstairs to the basement, walks in, and he sees a ton of blueprints and pictures.
It's just all out front?
Yes, it's confirmed that this thing is actually going to happen.
It's nice that he set it up that way. Like, it's nice
and
that the
that
uncle
was just a
didn't
room,
have that. Yeah. That guy.
And as he's looking at the plan, there's a guard that catches him, and then he reports it to Michael. Michael is about to shoot Mark, and then the task team, because he's actually reached out to them in at least 10 minutes in the show, they come by, and there's a massive shootout. Timur ends up dying. Michael ends up escaping, but Drew ends up getting shot, and he falls to the ground.
Who's Drew again?
Drew is the one that's son died, Noah, and he's managing the Little League team.
So we got one guy with a brain tumor. We got one guy who's been shot. We don't know what's the after effects of that, but his son is already dead. We have a drug addict. You haven't talked much about either the main guy, Nathan, the one in charge of the group, or also this Amber. Sorry, Evan Shepard. Yeah.
Yeah, that's because Evan, her big thing in the third episode, the subplot is she needs to figure out if she's going to give cupcakes or a cake to Luke for his birthday.
Is she like in Lazarus, the kind of tech nerd
Yeah,
lady?
yeah, that's exactly what she is, but I was like, that's really the storyline that we're going to be going with in episode 3?
It's interesting because she's been in, like, so much other stuff. She was a main in Death and Other Details, the Mandy,
I remember,
Patinkin
yeah, she was the
show.
main
She's
character.
from Truth or Dare, God Friended Me, The Flash. Like, she's had plenty of experience doing more serious roles, so backing up and just doing something kind of funny, I guess maybe that's what she wanted
But
to
I
do.
mean, like, I thought that it took away from the show. I was like, what am I watching right now? Also, I thought that Drew getting shot was a weird person to choose for the 3rd episode because Luke, I feel like, should have been the one that was shot. It would have been nice foreshadowing with the scene we got earlier where Mark shoots at him close to his head.
So he
Uh,
would have felt more guilty about it?
or
Like, Mark would have been like, "Oh, man, I
Because
should have
it's
done
his
that."
birthday as
Oh,
well
it's his birthday.
it's his birthday, in episode 3, and all this bad stuff is happening. I thought would have worked better thematically than Drew, who I feel like we didn't even really get to know that much. All we
Okay.
ever know is about the Little
So
League
3
team.
episodes in, quiz time, like, what do you know about this threat, this existential threat?
Nothing except for the fact that it's going to happen, and Volchek is the one that's doing
And
it.
what's the lead on Bolchek? Like, do they know where to go, or are we just waiting until episode 4 to tell us?
I think we're waiting probably past episode 4.
Is Nathan Blythe the main character who's setting up everybody, right?
Yeah.
Is he the Danny Ocean of the team? And would that make
No.
Mark like Brad Pitt?
No, because Danny Ocean was first off, he had something to do. He's not at the shootouts.
Yeah.
He's not, he's just the one that's heading the force. And I mean, like, actually, like, he has an actual job. So, and Danny Ocean is a criminal, at least.
That's interesting because it's kind of like with Rabbit Hole. Was that the Kiefer Sutherland show where
Yeah.
he was the boss? So he
Yes.
would be more like Nathan Blythe almost because he wouldn't go do these missions, but he would find out that his team had done that. Terminalist. I would also compare it to that maybe because I remember what's his face?
Chris Pratt.
Chris Pratt had a terminal illness, right? Wasn't that why he was called? Like he was trying to defeat the government, but at the same time he had his own time.
Yes, but where Terminalist succeeded, and I felt this failed, was that Terminalist did, like, I feel like it did a good job representing PTSD. This, we've already
Did you?
mentioned.
Really?
Well, better than Mark Meacham having this huge tumor, yet still being able to talk and concoct a plan.
Well, that's not PTSD. 24. There was one article in particular that was like, this is like having 5 Jack Bauers running around. And so at that point, I was like, that sounds pretty cool.
We didn't even get a lot of action with other people except for Mark and Amber. I felt like, aside from that shootout in episode 3, and if you want to count maybe the Border Patrol scene in episode 2 where they're trying to make it through, that's maybe the most action we get with all of them.
Okay. So reception-wise, what did you think? Like, what are you going to
This show was so boring. I did not like the will they, won't they. Nothing seems to matter, and there seems to be a lack of urgency. Even Drew getting shot, I'm sure he's probably going to be fine. There are huge storylines that are barely given the time of day. Again, Mark randomly learning about his brain cancer that he has. It's all very convoluted, and it also seems simplistic, which I know are two opposite things. I'm going to give it a 4 out of 10.
Okay, that's the same time. That's the same thing you gave it the first time we did the podcast.
Yes.
So I'm not super surprised. The critic reviews have also stayed mostly bad, like the first time we did the podcast. Roger Ebert said the average boomer will be unable to distinguish between this and the broadcast series they nod off to each evening.
Yes, because it felt like, I mean, even when I was seeing the police department, it felt like I could easily imagine the NBC emblem to the side of the screen. It
Except
just
with more
looked,
swearing.
yes, maybe not as many F words, they would cut that out, but like CSI, NCIS, FBI, Blue Bloods, Criminal Minds, it looked exactly the same. And even the action, it's not like it's overly
But those have
violent.
sunglasses in them, and you said no sunglasses in this. Especially the whipping kind where you just take them off when you find a lead. Hollywood Reporter said not enough twists. Is that true? I guess what they're also saying is that it wasn't predictable enough, or it was too predictable, and so like you weren't surprised by anything.
Yeah, there was no
major betrayals yet.
There was no part where I was like, oh, I can't believe that happened.
IGN said the Prime Video formula has zapped the concept of everything that made those shows CSI, NCIS work, which is kind of like the heart of those.
Yeah, and you want to know what this show was a lot like? It's like in Supernatural changing channels when they go into that cop world.
Yeah.
Where they go into that cop world, that's almost what this felt like.
I hate to bring it up, but that had a lot of sunglasses in it. That was the joke. Wrap. So the show is very bad, to be clear. The needle drops are somehow both the most obvious choices in the world and the most nonsensical choices in the world.
The songs didn't really, I didn't pay attention to that much.
Yeah, I saw that opinion reiterated on Twitter, on Reddit as well, when some people were saying that, like, yeah, they would play a rock song, but it would be just like at the most almost too in your face about it. Like, it would just be like, okay, it's time for rock song, and then they would go complete a mission.
I had problems with the show. I have to say I didn't notice that.
Okay. And then there's some places liked it. Collider, Screen Rant. So if you're out there and you enjoyed the explosions and Jensen Ackles doing his thing, I mean, he's got a lot of bleed over from the Supernatural fan base, which is already
Right.
weighed in on IMDb, where it has a 7 right now. However, strange how some of those accounts are very, very new. And yeah, so Reddit was also going after it for having the same title as the British series that is been around forever.
It's like a reality show or a game show, right?
And so they're making fun of that. They also called it signature network TV vibe. And then finally, there was a 2019 movie. And if they were basing their title off anything in the past named Countdown that wasn't the British series, like, it hasn't done well.
Tom Segura, right? I think I saw that.
Maybe,
Yeah.
but like the Metacritic score on both is so low. So yeah, not great reviews on this one, but will you continue to watch it?
No.
Okay. Thanks for listening. We'll see you in the next episode. Hope you enjoyed this one. Bye.
Bye.